Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to ProMat 2023, sponsored by MHI, and welcome to the Robotics and Automation Theater, sponsored by DC Velocity Magazine. Today, our speakers are Cody Best, President and CEO of Bespoke Manufacturing Company. We also have Cody James, Strategic Account Manager, Zebra Technologies, Robotics Automation. So let's have a warm welcome. Go ahead, guys.
All right. Thank you. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today, we're going to spend some time and discuss the impact of flexible automation in the high-mix, low-volume world of on-demand apparel manufacturing. As I said earlier, I'm Cody James, Strategic Account Manager with Fetch Robotics, and I have the pleasure of being joined on stage today with Cody Best. So Cody, quick snapshot of your background. Serial entrepreneur, current biathlete in the skiing and shooting event, part-time helicopter pilot, and former driver for Canada One. That is the former driver for Canada One. That is the name of the Canadian Olympic bobsled team,
right.
Correct?
Right.
And now you've advanced your journey into manufacturing.
Yes, yes. Now this is where my wife would jump in and say, that was 40 years ago, dear, so. Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join us today. And we're going to dive a little deeper into your background a little bit, but I just kind of want to take the time to set the stage a little bit and really high level present the things we're going to be discussing today. Across multiple industries and many different customer bases, manufacturing plants, distribution centers are facing many different issues, namely high demands across a larger number of SKUs and product mixes, customer expectations in both the B2C and B2B markets are outpacing traditional production processes, and that is forcing change in even the most monolithic of industries. Do any of those really kind of resonate with you?
Oh, absolutely. I think the industry that I'm currently in now, the garment industry, I'll go back a step. Cody, it's frightening the waste in this industry. If people aren't aware of it, we put one dump truck load of used clothing into landfills every second of every day, all year round. So a lot of people say it's the second worst polluter in the world after oil and gas. And if you haven't seen, there are two wonderful documentaries. The first one's called The True Cost, and then the second one is Where the Ships Go to Die. And the first one is the one that really got me into this, where I realized that there was a need for what we wanted to do. And then the second one was, I love the oceans. I'm not perfect at this, but I like to think of myself as an environmentalist. And so I watch what's happening to the oceans, and this documentary was such a shock to me because I hadn't really thought about where these ships go to die when they're finished. And they go over to certain countries in Africa, and they just get beached, and then they bleed out, and then they're destroyed and ruined for parts. And it's a crying shame to see that. And that was the tipping point for me to go into this industry and go, we can do better than that. And so we have.
Okay, so in the environmental impact that the current model for apparel and textile manufacturing was really the impetus for BMC.
That's right. That's where it all started. It came out of the last industry I was in was the book industry, and a lot of people go, what's the similarity? And I sometimes start a speech with, can you tell me a product that's made out of cloth, that's cut and sewn and folded and pressed and shipped to the end customer? And most people will go a shirt, a suit, a pair of pants, and I go, no, a hardcover book. And if you start to think about it, it's amazing the similarities between this industry. There's an equal and an opposite for every person in the industry. And what we did was we watched the return rate of books is about 35% of all hardcovers come back to be destroyed, and 55% of all soft covers. So it's an amazing, wasteful industry. Well, the clothing industry is double as wasteful as the book industry, and so that's really what drew me to this. Is there was a great chance And for people that don't know, and don't worry if you don't, but about 65% of all books are now produced on demand, meaning that they're not in existence when you order them, and they get shipped directly to you in, for Amazon, if you order by 6 o'clock tonight, we'll print it, bind it, and ship it by 4:30 the next morning. So it's not in existence. And that's what we're doing in the clothing business as well. So,
and I think that's a great segue into our next slide before we jump forward here. I think one of the things that really resonates with probably everyone in the audience and really everyone at the show, even outside of the four main issues that we put up here, these are not specific to any industry or any type of manufacturing process. Likely every single person at this show is trying to address these same problems and more. And when you take a step back with that perspective and the video we're about to watch on BMC and say, I have all of these problems and I'm trying to produce a minimum order quantity of one across over more than 500,000 SKUs, you really have to change the way that you think about your business and your process.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I'm going to correct you. It's 500 million SKUs.
500 million SKUs, sorry.
SKUs, yeah, so.
Only a factor of 100 shy. I apologize. So with that, we'll go ahead and present our video. So Kirby, that was a quite impressive video, and it did show many different processes and really automated equipment being used to do different things. Can you give us maybe a 30,000-foot view of how BMC operates, everything from initial customer order and interaction with BMC all the way to receiving their product?
Sure. So just quickly, a brand will have set up their product in our system, and that's a sister company that sets that up. And then most of the brands that we deal with have web front stores on Shopify or Amazon or any of the big ones, and they will receive their orders all night, all day, and they come into our factory and they're put into the first electronic bucket, which is the fabric, and then the second electronic bucket, which is the color of their fabric. And at that point, then we switch modes over to our long run mode, and we will try and hold those orders to gang as many as possible, but the clock starts ticking, and if we don't get any orders between the placement of the first one and the time that says you got to start now or you're going to deliver it late, then we run. And so we'll do a quantity of one, and I would say 95–99% of our work is one-off manufacturing. So it'll flow from those electronic buckets to the cutting tables, and the cutting tables, the robotic arm goes back and forth and cuts the individual pieces, and then we put it into a yellow tote, and this is where we still use conveyors. The conveyors take it over to the modular parts department, where the part is presented to the tote. So it could be a zipper, a hook and an eye, buttons, thread, and it all goes into that single tote. Then it goes to the end of a little 4-foot conveyor where a fetch robot will pick it up, and the robot will take it from station to station to station. And if I can have a little fun with this, a lot of people say, did you buy the robots to save on labor? And I just never know, I'm always shocked at that. I did not buy them to save labor. I bought them because we can run literally hundreds of thousands of instructions to them. So once it's left the parts department, it now has a conversation with our system and says, what pod do you have to go to? And it'll say, well, I have to go to the hemming pod. And then it'll say, great, what machine do you need? And it'll say, I need a single needle sewing machine. And it'll go, okay, great. In the hemming pod, we have 25 single needle sewing machines working today. What color thread do you need? And it'll say, I need black thread. So it goes back and forth to the system, and it'll say, of the 25 machines, 5 are on black thread. And then it'll say, what caliber of sewer do you need? So it'll say, I need a gold level or a bronze level or a silver level sewer. And it'll say, well, of the 5, 2 are capable of doing that garment. It'll say, great, of the 2, who has the least amount of work in front of them? And so they'll say, well, Sally has 7 totes in front of her, and Bob has 4. And it'll say, send me to Bob. So the robot will take him to Bob. Now, if Bob goes on a break and Sally goes down to 3 totes, then it'll re-divert itself and go to Sally and load level the plant automatically that way. So that's how we use these robots, and no human could think that way. In the current factory, we have roughly 120 sewing stations. In the new factory, we will have 256 sewing stations. So no person, you could have 30 people trying to outsmart it, and you couldn't do it. And that's why the robots became necessary to be able to load level the plant. And we're even now, we've got a new program that we'll introduce that will actually change the labor as well as the product around. So when we're gearing up from 0 in our plant to a fully staffed plant, we can move staff around automatically. So it's really changed the way we think.
And I believe that, at least from the outside looking in, is the core difference of BMC versus the rest of the world. Yeah. The ability to immediately react to a customer order, regardless of order size, and live load level your plant is what's allowing you to shift the apparel industry from make it then sell it to sell it then make it. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely fair. It's helping change it. We're the only ones in the world that are doing this at this stage, so we're kind of getting the word out that this can be done. And a lot of the older mentality-wise people in the industry go, it'll never work, it'll never happen, as they did in the book industry. You know, I remember all the big publishers said, this'll never work. And we're just at that tipping point in the garment business where now they're seeing it, now we've got a plant that can demonstrate it and stuff. And now they're willing to realize that if you make a product that is more in tune with the customer, and the customer can say, well, I want a pocket here, I want short sleeves, I want long sleeves, I want the tunic a little bit longer. You know, they're involved now in the design of it, and they're far, far less likely to throw it out or not keep it or whatever. So the return rates are around 30–40% in the garment business. Generally, with a customized product, it's less than half of 1%. So it changes the game substantially, and that's what's making them realize 2 things, if I can go on for just a few more seconds. Mm-hmm. The first thing is that it's making them realize that it can be done. And the second thing is they're starting to realize that the cost per unit shouldn't be their only measurement. They should be looking at the cost per unit sold, meaning that all of the costs after the unit cost, the shipping from China, the handling, the Port of Los Angeles, the trucking to their warehouse, their trucking to the DCs, their handling in all those places are really a significant cost. Whereas when we make the product, it goes into their packaging and it goes straight to the customer. So no one touches it other than the inspectors and the shipping people. So it's a much more efficient way to do it. But people are so siloed in their accounting that they have trouble understanding that sure, it might be a lot more expensive over here, but if you don't have these 5 other silos in costs, overall it's much better. So yes, it's changing everything.
So we've talked about what BMC does now and the processes that you're taking to do this, but that hasn't always been the case. We'll go to our next slide. Let's start to talk through how you get to here.
Yeah.
Because this wasn't the first attempt at it. Not that the first attempt failed, it's just you quickly learned that maybe there were some limitations to the industry standard, or actually that wasn't industry standard at the time, but that there were improvements on what you could have done. And so what we've got here is just a picture of the before and after. And so the before was your previous company, On Point Manufacturing, that had some revolutionary concepts to it. And now we're looking at the today with more open space in the robotics. Can you talk us through how you went from image on the left to image on the right, and what were some of the drivers of that?
Sure. So the image on the left side, the before, you're looking at what we called the brain, and the brain was a long conveyor belt, I think about 250 feet long, and at the end was one single barcode reader, and it decided where the tote would go, but it could only send every second tote. And so every once in a while you'd get a tote that would be stuck as the second tote for 3 or 4 days, and little things that we learned. The one barcode system was horrible. We couldn't keep track of where totes were, and we tried to expand it, but we just couldn't do it fast enough. Now we have, I think, 256 Zebra scanners, so we generally know where everything is in the plant all at once. I think the other thing was, as you can tell, the conveyor belts, which I love, but are bolted into the floor, and we can't move them, and we can't be changing things around quickly. With the robots, we can change things in minutes, and we've set up all the stations, or we call them cockpits, to be plug and play, so we can change machines in and out very quickly. We can reprogram where the bots know those machines are, and it's just allowed us to be much more efficient and much more flexible in what we're doing. So.
Got it. And it's actually about 220 scanners right now, but don't worry, I'll get you a quote for the other 40. We can get that worked out. One of the things that you mentioned, and I wanted to touch on a little more, is so you shifted from conveyors that were bolted down to robots, Fetch or Zebra roller top robots, and the addition of Zebra scanners. Has that helped with getting more visibility to your end customers on where their product is in the life cycle, and reducing that orphan tote scenario to where you don't have a tote that's waiting in queue 3 or 4 days?
Yeah, Cody, you brought up a great interesting debate in the company. I'm a huge believer in transparency, and we're really shaking up the industry because the end client who has ordered the product, if the brand allows them, can go right in and follow their product from order entry to cutting to sewing to parts to everything, and shipping and out the door. And then we tie into FedEx or UPS, and they can track it all the way home. I got to tell you, my plant manager, my 2 guys that run it, aren't very happy that everybody can see their work and how fast it's going through and everything else. But I think it's the way of the future. I'm one of those nutcases that if I order something from Amazon, I will watch it being tracked from the distribution to where it's being delivered. And you know, Amazon during the Christmas period, even you can follow the truck coming to your house, and I love stuff like that, and I just thought, why not be transparent? And remember, now they send the order to China, and they hope they get it back in 6 to 8 months, and they have no idea where it is generally. And you know, with all the issues that we had with the Port of Los Angeles, you know, it could be on a ship for 2 or 3 weeks, just floating in the harbor. So this transparency, I think, will garner a lot of support in the industry. So
certainly, yeah. Examining my own habits as a consumer,
yeah,
I want the ability to go in. Not that I want a text message every time it's move to a new station.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to dive in
Yeah.
when I'm at that point. And what that brings us to is, as you start to see this increase in your customer base and the need to expand, and remembering that picture from the last slide, the fact that you now have removed, I believe, you went from 90% of conveyor in that facility down to about 10% of what you previously had, and that freed up about 33% more space to operate in. Does that allow you to keep up with surge in demands that you're not yet aware of?
Well, it allows us to have more capacity in the plant, and that allows us to meet those demands for the moment. We're a little worried about, how we believe that we're right at the tipping point, and that a lot of people will go this way. So we're currently trying to build out another plant. We're going to announce this soon, but we expect to be the largest producer of bridesmaids dresses. We will launch this June 1st, and we expect to ramp up to about 800 dresses a day in the first 2 years, and then move to about 1,500 dresses a day after that. So we've got to be building factories now because, as you know, it takes 4 to 8 months to get things delivered. So we got to be on top of it to meet that demand.
Exactly. And so, actually, moving now more into our next slide, the flexibility to meet demand surges. So, with the upcoming new facility and demand that you can forecast, you have a plan for that. Acquiring new buildings, building up new factories. But even now, at Facility 1, as demand surge comes in, how have maybe the robots and the fixed scanners helped you to better address that? Or let me back up. Do you think you could easily overcome that demand spike with the previous system you had tried?
No, it would have been very difficult. We were so kind of anchored into the floor, as the analogy, and we couldn't change a lot of things. We're a lot more flexible now, and so I think we're better equipped. We certainly understand it 100 times more, and we can see things happening further in advance and start to prepare for it by either moving equipment or moving people or reprogramming where to run the sewing stations. So.
And that ties into something you had mentioned earlier about the fact that your overarching system, I believe it's called M3.
Yes.
How M3 is receiving data from the floor 7 times a second.
Right.
And you're able to, in real time, load balance the facility for current production needs and for what's about to come in?
Yes. So we're seeing it, of course, as soon as the order comes in from the customer through Shopify or whatever system they're on, we now can start to see where it's all going to go. Now, we don't know what sewer it's going to go to, but we know what machine it'll go to, what color thread it needs, and now we can start to adjust things far in advance. Like the night before, we should know enough about where things are going for the first 6 hours. And I'll tell a cute story. When I ran the on-demand division for Ingram, my first board meeting, I went to the guy who ran the barge division. He got to stand up and he said, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I am so excited to tell you that we are now fully booked for 1 year in the barge division. And I thought, oh man, how am I going to answer this one? So I got up and when it was my turn, and I said, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I am so excited to tell you we are fully booked for the next 4 hours. And people were kind of shocked at that, but we had such a diverse and huge library of books that every 4 hours the orders would just keep coming on, and we tried to keep it in that 4 hour space. And that's a shock to a lot of traditional manufacturers who would like to see 4 months worth of manufacturing. I'd like to get it down to four hours. We actually will pay the associates, if they can get it down to 0, they get a half day off before a long weekend. just to keep that pressure on to get things out. Do you want to talk about that for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
Yeah, just the screen up here is really important. We've not only gone to on-demand on making our clothing, but this dress that you see right there, and sometimes when we do a demonstration, we'll have a model come out that's in an absolutely white dress, and then this model comes out in the printed dress. So that was printed on a digital printer. So same thing, the dress can come in, the order can come in, and they can say, I want, that's an orchid, I think, on that dress. I want the orchid here on the dress, and press print, and it goes through the whole system and can create. So we can now create, whether it's we want the dress to be red or blue, or if we have the Burberry permission, print a Burberry pattern, or we can do butterflies or any color that we want, and it's massive what this will do to on-demand manufacturing.
That's impressive.
Yeah, just while it was up there, it was kind of neat to see.
I think the next time I visit, I'll arrive early and get my order in, and then
get your dress,
pack it out with me. But it brings us to our next main topic slide, an increase in productivity and efficiency. And I love this quote. You've mentioned it before, and it's interesting. I've heard others in other industries say as well. If you touch it, you've lost money. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. I don't mean necessarily physically touch it, and yet I do mean that. It's the more you touch a product going through a system, the more you're going to lose money or not make as much money on it. So the idea of being able to flow product through automatically was just so important to us, and that's why the robots were the next logical step. And I think there were two things that we've built the companies on. The first one was scalability. You've got to be able to scale it. You've got to be able to scale it. And did I mention you've got to be able to scale it? And so we've done that. And with the robots, you know, it's relatively easy when we go to the next level to say, Cody, I need 5 more robots or whatever. And then the second one is you've got to eliminate every part of human touching in the system, and that's what we've done. Mm-hmm. So,
and I think a good way to look at this for your business specifically, maybe it's a little easier to see. How hard is it to find a good sewer, and how long does it take to bring someone that's new and get them up to be a master sewer?
Yeah, and that is a critical question for us. So it's very difficult to find sewers. It's a dying art, and it's an art that I love. I could watch them sew all day long, but we had to rethink this, and the woman that was actually wearing that red dress, she and I wrote a whole paper on, it's called seam theory, and we have a 1111 thought, and that is that we believe that if a person comes in and they can thread a machine and they can turn it on and off and do a few things, that if we get them to focus on one type of fabric, on one machine, on one seam, we can train them in one day. And now there's 50 fabrics. You can go from a stiff cotton to a really loose silk. So there's lots of other things they go to, and there's of course at least 50 different sewing machines. So that matrix becomes bigger and bigger, but we've set our whole plant up to be pods, and the pods represent one type of seam, like a side seam or a shoulder seam or a hem. And so we start them off on cotton, on a single needle sewer, and generally we can get them up to speed in one day. In 1 week they can become superb at it. So a whole different way to train the next generation of sewers.
But no trivial task. None at all. And I think that's something that will resonate with most people here, certainly everyone at the show. Finding good people that you can train and then maintaining their talent is a challenge. And so when you walk out on your floor, you would much rather see people sewing and doing something rather than pushing material around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And ultimately that's what we were looking to really get at was what we look to do in automation. And as you walk through the show, most of what you will see is geared towards keeping your operators, keeping your personnel tied to the value-added tasks. And now you've heard it directly from President and CEO. That's what I want too. So, excellent. that about wraps up the content slides. We just want to pull back one last slide and talk about some of our key learnings here. We've got a few points up here, I think maybe 4.
Yeah.
Are there any of these that really just stand out to you or that hit home for you?
Yeah, I'm going to take a shot at Fetch and
we got it recorded. You can do it.
Okay. So these guys are fabulous in a laboratory. They know exactly what they're doing, but I think the key to success is working together with the companies, particularly your robotic company. If you're thinking of putting robotics in, you want to pick a partner that will really work with you, and Fetch has been nothing short of amazing. They don't have the egos that are so big that they go, that's not a problem. The first thing that we would say is learn the mapping. The mapping was our biggest issue to begin with. We thought we could go 2 ways and go all around, and we've ended up with what we call a Canadian traffic jam, where you've got 5 or 6 bots and they're kind of moving like this, and then finally, you know, they're going, no, you go first, no, you go first, no, you go first, and finally they'll get going and they'll disperse. But I wish we'd spent a lot more time setting out the routes and then understanding the limitations of the turnaround area. So, you know, these are not inexpensive little machines, and they're about the same price as a Honda Civic, but there's no leather and there's no reverse camera.
A used Honda Civic.
Yeah, a used Honda Civic, okay. And so, you know, there's things that we're learning together in this environment. No one's ever done this before, so it's so important to work together with a company like Fetch and like Zebra that are understanding that our needs are different than what they would be in a laboratory environment. So.
And I think you touch on a key point, especially if you're looking at doing something new. Maybe not to the extent that BMC is in flipping an industry on its head, but new technology or going down a new path that's going to be different for your company and your operators. Partnership is pretty critical, both from the beginning of the project stage all the way through the end, and then continued support. I think rarely, there's some very impressive companies here, but rarely is there one machine, one company that absolutely does it from end to end. So really, it takes that coordination between everyone.
Yeah, the integration is just the key part of everything now. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the last things that we have up here, just humans in automation is better than just humans or just robots. Maybe to pull that back a little bit, do you see a scenario where you've got a lights out factory and someone just comes in to load the truck and drive it out?
No.
Or humans will always be in the loop?
I believe humans will always be in the loop. And funny, I can just see something on that picture. I'm a big believer in being part of the international community. And so each one of these robots flies a flag from the country that one of our sewers are from. So you can see the flags on there, and I can't tell you, I can see Italy, it looks like Greece, and probably Spain in the foreground. So I think that's so important. But Cody, you hit on a point. It's a combination of the two. I think the two together it's not +1 + 1 is 2, it's 1 + 1 equals 5 in this case. And what they're doing is spectacular. I will tell you another quick story that there's been no concern about the robots. They just run around freely and nobody worries about it. And I thought this was going to be a massive issue, that people would be upset about these things. They do seem to follow you every once in a while, which is a little unnerving. And our plant gets in at 6 in the morning and leaves around 3:30. But at 5:30 at night, all the robots wake up where they are, and then all the lights start blinking and they go back to their charging station. And that's kind of been interesting. But back to your working together, we can now run 2 shifts on the parts and the cutters and send them to the robots so they will distribute them out to all the sowers at night, which can be a lights off operation, so that when the sowers come in the morning, they've got at least 7 totes waiting, and then we've got more in storage, which will come out automatically. And so that's a great combination.
So they're preloading the work cells, essentially. So
Correct.
I can come clock in and automatic, or immediately I'm ready to get to work and start working on a garment.
Yeah, it's a little bit of, if my desk ever gets clean, and it never does, but when it gets down a little bit, I start to go, wow, I've got a lot of extra time now. And so if I don't have a lot of things, and I kind of have that theory, and that's why we have 7 totes lined up from the sower, is to know, and on their screen in front of them, everybody has a touch screen laptop, and it'll show them that they're expecting 42 more totes that day, so that they know more work's coming. So,
excellent. And so with that, we come to our last slide. This is QR codes for both Kirby and I. Feel free to reach out to us. Zebra Technologies, we actually have quite a large booth over in the other hall in South 647. We have all of our currently available robot models on display doing different use cases and applications, so feel free to come by, ask us questions, talk with us, and really see what could be possible. We will be giving autographs here in a little bit, so if you want our autographs, we will certainly be happy to do that.
I have a key.
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah. So Kirby actually has a QR code. He won't be signing anything. Mine actually just goes to the BMC website. No need to scan. But at this point, we've got about 8-9 minutes left. Any questions? We just did so good. Excellent.
You guys are awesome. Any questions? Anyone?
So Kirby, I do have a question for you. And we talked a little bit about this. What was roughly the adoption curve from the operator? So they come in, robots start running around. How long was that before they started to feel comfortable with it? And was there anything that you did to help shorten that time?
Great question. I would go 0. It was complete adoption right away. No one batted an eyelash. In fact, I was kind of almost disappointed that they weren't more enamored with the robots. We suffer from something in our industry where Sally and Janie and Sam have been working together for 20 years. And so a tote will come to Sally and she'll go, oh, this is to go to Sam. And now it's out of the system. Now the barcodes haven't picked it up and the robot hasn't taken it to Sam. Now we don't know where it is. And that was probably and to be one of the biggest issues we've had is teaching them to let the system work, and when it works beautifully. So
that's interesting. So it wasn't so much getting used to the robots or the technology; it was just adapting to the new system.
Correct.
Hey, I can't just take this tote off the line because now I lose visibility of it in my system.
And I just can't tell you how often we had to correct that. In them.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So one last question I have: Why Zebra? Why did you go with us?
I would say it was the salesman.
Oh, I think your microphone's a little up.
Sorry, did I lose that?
There you go.
Okay. I would say it's the salesman. It's always the salesman. Am I losing it? Okay.
There it is.
Yeah, it was highly recommended. S&H brought you to us. We had looked at several others, but we liked this. It was US based. It fit into our whole philosophy. You could deliver on time. But more importantly, I think it was the willingness to listen to where we wanted to go and what the future would be. So we just felt a very strong relationship with your team, and that's really what led us to you guys. So
excellent. Well, thank you.
And the sales guy. Did I say it was this? Yeah.
Hey, Cody.
Great.
This gentleman's got a question.
Great.
So I'm from Detroit, and I'm used to seeing assembly lines and a lot of automation. But as I look at this technology, I think there's a lot of applications in other industries, and I think this just, what I found here at this presentation was amazing, and I think there's strong applications. Are you starting to see applications in other industries?
So I'm sorry, the question, the use cases in multiple industries. Yeah, and being on the sales team for Zebra and the Fetch Robotics line, I certainly get the benefit of going into many different customers that span many different industries, and I'll say absolutely. So as you're looking at our offerings, and really any types of technology, you really have to think of what is that doing and what does it solve. So with Zebra Robotics, with Fetch, our goal is to take movement out of an operator's task list and keep them on higher value-added tasks. And that last piece, higher value-added tasks, really encompasses most of the technology you'll see here at ProMat. If I can take hours or thousands of steps out of someone's task for the day, they can go somewhere else in my operation and provide a higher value. So when you look at applications or customers through that lens, you start to find many different use cases. So here we're using our roller tops to move totes back and forth. The tote comes off of the conveyor, gets scanned by a Zebra scanner, and that's what tells the BMC M3 system where that tote is. We could do similar applications for cart movement. We have solutions for pallet movement. We have solutions for e-commerce and order fulfillment. But they all have the common theme of reducing steps.
So I'd like to take a shot at that as well. Can you hear?
Maybe a little closer.
I'm testing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Nope.
I'll yell it out. Our system, we believe, the M3 system that Cody referred to, I was fortunate enough to spend 10 years right near the where they're building the nuclear subs up in Groton, Connecticut. And all of my neighbors were engineers on building the subs. And so when we built M3, we kind of had that in mind, that we had to be able to build anything. And although we will go after the furniture business next, but in theory, we could build a nuclear sub with this M3 system. So it's just getting the right parts to the right people at the right time. That's the key to the whole. Between these systems and our system, we'll go after a lot of other industries.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you both for coming out and everyone from coming today. Thank Kirby and Cody. And if you have any questions, you can also come down and chat with them as well. But thank everyone for coming. Thank Zebra and BMC.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, guys. Thank you.
everyone.
Round of applause for these guys. Thank you.
Cool.